Israelites were in Egypt. Now, up till this time, the Israelites were flourishing, and they were growing in numbers in Egypt. But an evil Pharaoh came to power and saw this. He saw how large the Israelites were and how they were growing in strength. And he said, those Israelites, there must be a law. I must kill all the baby Israelite boys and throw them into the Nile River. Kill all the baby boys? So the Egypt soldiers went out to the Israelite homes, and they took the baby boys and they threw them into the Nile River. But one Hebrew woman who had a baby boy hid her son in a waterproof basket and put him in the Nile River. He was followed by his own sister. Now his sister watched him as he floated down the Nile until he came to Pharaoh's daughter. Pharaoh's daughter saw the baby. She opened up the basket. The baby was crying. She had compassion. She told the sister, "Go find me an Israelite woman so that she will be able to take care of the baby until the baby is old enough to come into my house." So the sister, she went and got her own mother, and her mother took care of the baby, whose name was Moses. Now, once Moses was old enough, he came into Pharaoh's household and grew up as Pharaoh's daughter's son. And he grew up in Pharaoh's household and became Pharaoh's grandson.
One day, the younger son came to his father, and he said, "Father, you promised me an inheritance, and I want it right now." The father actually did as the son asked. He divided his inheritance and gave some of it to his older son and some of it to his younger son. The younger son soon decided that he would take all his money and he was going to go and live on his own. He was going to go to a distant land. So he went to this distant land. But he wasn't very wise, and he spent all his money. Soon there was a famine, and he had nothing to eat. He had no money to buy food. So he decided, well, I gotta find a job. He got a job feeding pigs. But it didn't help. He was so hungry. He was so hungry that he even wanted to eat the pig slop. Yeah. Finally, he thought, I'll go back to my house and ask my father to make me a servant. That way, I can still eat. So he began his journey home, and he went over the hill, and he saw his house, but his father was also looking out, and he saw his son. The father didn't act like a wise old man anymore. He picked up his robes, and he ran to his son and gave him a huge hug. The son said, "Father, I've sinned against you and heaven. Please, I'll make it up to you. I'll become your servant." The father just laughed. He told the servant, "Go, get robes and a golden ring and sandals for my son, and kill the fatted calf." The older brother had been working in the field all day. He came home tired and sweaty, and he heard music and laughing. He asked his servant, "Is there a party? Why is everyone having so much fun?" The servant said, "Your brother! He came home today, and we're having a party to celebrate." The son just became angry. Finally, the father came out and said, "Son, your brother, he's back. Come, join in the celebration." But the son just said, "I've worked for you hard my whole life, and you haven't given me any party or any fatted calf. Why would you give your son, who spent all your inheritance that you gave him, a party?" The father said, "Son, everything I have is yours. But your younger brother, he was dead, and now he is alive. He was lost, and now he is found." Yeah.
And do you think you forgive your brothers and sisters a day? I did. Abigail? Twice. Daisy, how about you? 6. Now, how many times do you think you should forgive your brothers and sisters? Steffi?
1,000.
Noah?
7,000 times.
Well, this is a question that Peter asked Jesus. He said, Jesus, how many times should I forgive my brothers and sisters? Should I forgive them 7 times? And Jesus said, no, you should forgive them 7 times 70. And this is 490 times. That's a lot of times. And God told a parable to explain this. So once there's a master, he had a servant who owed him $1,000. And he said, you need to pay me my money. And the servant, he fell on his knees. He said, please, no, I don't have the money. Just give me more time. And the servant says, okay, I forgive you of your debt. And now, the servant who was forgiven of his debt went out to a man. He grabbed my neck and swung around and said, hey, you pay me my $100. And the other man, he fell on his knees. He's like, please spare me. Just give me more time. And the man who had gone forgiven, he said, no, you need to pay me now. And he threw him in jail until he would pay his debt. The master, he saw this, went out to the man and said, shouldn't you forgive him of his debt since I have forgiven you of your debt? And so the master, he took the man, gave him to the jailers, and he said to put him in jail until he paid his debt. And he let the other man free. This is what your Father in heaven will do to you if you do not truly forgive your brothers and sisters in your heart.
My story happens after Israel had been split into 2 nations, Judah and Israel. And it begins when Syria decided to attack Israel. Now, the Syrian king, he brought all his commanders together, and he would say, go attack such and such a place. But God would tell Elisha, the prophet at the time, what they were planning to do, and Elisha would go and warn the king. After this happened many times, the Syrian king gathered his commanders together again and said, which one of you is a spy? And they would say, it's not us, it's not us. It's Elisha. Elisha has been telling the king. He knows what you're planning to do, even if you speak it alone in your bedroom. And so the Syrian king was frightened of Elisha, and he decided that they must kill him. So they found out where Elisha was staying, and he told his soldiers to go and attack him. Now a man saw the soldiers coming, and he ran to Elisha saying, Elisha, the soldiers are coming. They're going to kill us. But Elisha looked at him and he said, we shouldn't be afraid. Our army is so much larger than theirs. The man looked at Elisha and he's like, Elisha, we don't have an army. We can't defeat them. We're going to die. But Elisha prayed to the Lord. He said, Lord, open this man's eyes. And the Lord did. His eyes were opened, and he saw angels and chariots surrounding the city. And he trusted that the Lord was going to take care of them. Then Elisha prayed again, and he prayed that the Lord would blind the soldiers that were coming to attack him. And the Lord did as Elisha asked. And so the soldiers were stumbling around. They didn't know where they were going. And so Elisha went out to them and he said, soldiers, where are you going? They said, we're trying to find the place where Elisha is. And so Elisha agreed to take them to the town. But he didn't really. He trapped them in a city in Israel when the Israelites were surrounding the soldiers. And then, once they were in the middle of the town, Elisha prayed to the Lord again and asked him to open their eyes. And the Lord did. And when they opened their eyes, they saw all the Israelite soldiers surrounding them, and they were frightened. But the king of Israel, instead of killing them right then, asked Elisha what he should do. And Elisha told the king to prepare a feast for them, and to have music and dancing, and just have a feast. So this is what the king did. And there was a bunch of food, and everybody was happy and laughing and talking to each other. And once they were so full that they couldn't eat any more, the king of Israel sent them back to their king. And the soldiers told the king of Syria what the king of Israel had done. And so they left, and they didn't attack Israel again for many years.
Now, does anyone here know what a vineyard is? No.
It's the things where it's a place where they grow fruits and grapes and vines.
Yeah, to make wine.
Yes.
So the master of the vineyard, he looked out and he saw all of his fields. But then he saw a cloud coming. A storm was going to come, and he thought to himself, the storm is going to destroy my field. I have to go get workers to come pick all my grapes for me. So he went out to the marketplace, and he found some workers, and he agreed to pay them each a denarius. So he brought them to his vineyard, and they began working. Now, it was about 9 in the morning, and the work was still not getting done fast enough. So the vineyard owner again went out and found more workers, and he told them he would pay them whatever was right for what they did. So they went out. Now, it was between noon and 3. It was still not getting done, and he was afraid everything was going to get destroyed. So he went out again. Now, these workers weren't as good as the other ones, but they would do for what he needed them to do. So they began working. Now, it was the 11th hour. He was still not going to get his grapes all picked, and there was going to be some destroyed. So he ran again to the marketplace, and he found some, well, we'd probably think of them as homeless people. But they were laying around, they weren't doing anything. So he said, well, come and help me in my field, and I'll give you some money. So the work finally got done, and all of his grapes got picked. So the master, he asked his servants to bring all the workers back to his house. And he said to put them in the order of the first ones who he hired to be last, and the last to be first. So the first workers thought, well, we're gonna get more money than those homeless people. I mean, we're so much better, right? Right, Daisy? Like if you do your chores and you're like, I did more than Stephanie. Stephanie's not gonna get as big of a price as I am. But the master didn't think like that. He gave everyone the same amount of money. Now, the good workers, or the workers who worked the longest, they started getting angry with the master and saying things like, he is so unfair. I deserve more than that. I should get more than him. Now, the master, when he heard this, he looked at the workers and said, isn't this my money? Can't I do with my money what I want? I gave you what I told you I'd give you. So he told the other workers to go away, and they left angry. Now the master said to the other workers, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. For many are called, but few are chosen.
His name was King Nebuchadnezzar. He was a very prideful man. He was prideful because Daniel had told him the meaning of his dream. He dreamed of a golden statue. Daniel told him that he was the head of the statue because God had given him a great kingdom, and honor and glory. The king took this in the wrong way. Instead of thanking God for giving him this great kingdom, he became very prideful. He decided to make a statue. It was huge, taller than this church, and 9 feet wide. He was very proud of this statue. It was made completely out of gold. So he called for everyone to gather and to dedicate the statue. Once everyone was gathered around the statue, he sent a messenger out and the messenger said, this is a command. When you hear the music start, you shall fall on your knees and worship the statue. If you do not, you shall be cast into the fiery furnace. Everyone who heard this knew this was a command, and it was to be obeyed. But there was one small problem with this. It broke one of the commandments. Can anyone guess what the commandment is?
The first one.
You know it? What is it?
Thou shalt Thou shalt have
No other God.
What does this mean? You should fear and love God.
No, fear, love, and trust in God above all things.
We shall fear, love, trust in God above all things.
Good, good. Right. So Meshach, and Abednego. And they had a terrible decision in front of them. Either they could obey the king and do the easy thing and bow down before the statue, but that would be disobeying God's command. Or they could obey God and be cast into the fiery furnace. They trusted God and knew that he would protect them. So when the musicians started, they did not bow before the statue. Some men saw this and they immediately went to tell the king. The king was confused. He said, "Who would have bowed before my statue? Who can stand against me?" Because since he was so prideful, he thought he was maybe even more powerful than God. And so he told the men to bring the men to him. He asked the men, "Why don't you bow before my statue? What God can protect you?" And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, "We don't need to defend ourselves. We know that our God will protect us. And even if he does let us perish in the fires, we will never bow before a false god." And the king was so mad. I imagine he turned bright red, and steam was flying out of his ears. He yelled, "Turn the furnace up 7 times hotter! Tie them up and cast them in there!" And so these really strong men went to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, tied them up, picked them up, and threw them into the furnace. Now the flames were so hot that the strong men died instantly. The king was thinking about what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had said about how their God would protect them in the flames. So he looked through, and what he saw amazed him. They were still alive. Their hands were untied, and they were walking around. But this is what amazed the king so much. There were 4 men in there, not 3. He asked the crowd around him, "Did we not throw 3 men in? I see 4, and one of them looks like a son of a god." And so he called the men out of the fiery furnace. They came out, and they were untouched. They didn't even smell like smoke. The king immediately worshipped the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because what God could save them from this furnace? The king ordered a new law, that everyone would worship the one true God. Even though the king did a terrible deed, God caused this deed to turn into something good. He caused God to be glorified through this.
Stephanie?
And I like the part where the guy he kept on getting a bunch of workers.
And he went and got some homeless people and they got loaded up, right? That's not fair. Casey?
I like when they threw them in the fire.
You like that? I don't think I would like being thrown in the fire. Mary?
I like how they believed in God so much that they would be thrown in a fiery furnace, then bowing down to one easy little idol.
Yeah. They said, and I forget if Miriam said this, but they said, "We don't have to take our time to answer you, King. We already know. We already know our answer. We're not bowing down." Anyone else? Okay, well,